not to answer the question, but it raises the question whether all those concerns about some sudden return to imperialism in Japan might not have been unfounded as a fear. But for whatever reason, the crowds thinned all along the route. Now, after a religious Shinto ceremony, that's the controversial ceremony, the Shinto ceremony, there will be a second formal state funeral, also at Shinjuku Garden. Along with President Bush, 54 other heads of state are here. More than 162 nations in all represented, an indication of Japan's status as world superpower. And understand clearly that that's exactly the way the Japanese take this tremendous turnout of representatives from other countries, including the quick response of President Bush originally, who very quickly said that, yes, he'd be here. For the Japanese, this is a turning point moment in history. The passing of a man who has been a god, a leader, a father to his people for 63 years. Keep in mind that when Hirohito came to power, Calvin Coolidge was President of the United States. This is also a chance to bury a part of the past most people here in Japan would rather forget. During this special edition of 48 Hours, we will be reporting on the Hirohito funeral and looking ahead at some of the challenges Japan must meet in the dawn of a new era.
When they talk about the faces of a new Japan, that's one of them.
You can never ever rely on taxis in downtown Tokyo.
His name is Kazumi Umeda. He's 33, and in a nation of organization men who traditionally dedicate their entire lives to one company, he's practically a revolutionary.
I'm worried about being late. This is a very important presentation. They're gonna kill me.
Kazumi's roots are less Hirohito than Harvard, which happens to be where he went to business school.
I have to sell my personality.
He's an entrepreneur who started his own consulting company in Tokyo.
They're thinking of developing an all-purpose event hall in that commercial complex. And I did a feasibility study for that business in that location for their company. What I'm going to do is tell him that your idea sucks, okay?
And he's part of a new breed in Japan.
He might think that this is my business. You know? What do you know about it?
Young business people who have no desire to climb someone else's corporate totem pole.
Here in Japan, people are afraid of taking risks, okay? In career, in their personal life, in changing their job. But over there in the States, people appreciate or respect other people's courage.
The old way in Japan is crumbling, as old ways always do. This generation grew up in the rubble of the war. They developed a dawn-to-dusk work ethic just to survive. But their children are growing up in a different Japan, a peaceful, affluent country. And that does something to a nation and its people, doesn't it? They won't import American cars, but they've done pretty well importing American culture. And they've got a name for this new generation. It's called Shinjinrui, which translates into new species of human beings, which gives you some idea just how alien they are to traditional Japanese culture. They're young, they're hip, they're out for a good time. They are not a chip off the old block. In places like the United States, we would write this off as nothing more than a generation gap. But here in Japan, it's a lot more complicated than that. Here, a lot of older people who are workaholics and proud of it see this new generation as very un-Japanese.
I very often wish some of these people work a little harder, or at least be a little more imaginative, because they can do a better job, they can be more productive.
Matsumi Muramatsu is 58. He runs a company in Tokyo.
I see a lot of industrialists, business people. They worry probably partly because they fear that young people will not stay with the same employers as long as they used to.
This is a pretty big TV, right? This thing has more speakers than the Yankee Stadium. You are a Yuppie. You're the Japanese version of our Yuppie.
I don't know. My understanding of American Yuppies is that, they don't spend money out of their parents' pocket. They make money. They work hard, and they make money, and they spend it very wisely.
It's just like you?
I would say so, yeah.
We are becoming less of a manufacturing nation. We're not an assembly shop for the world anymore. I don't think there's a greater shift to the service industries, what many people call software, and young people today will survive all these changes and become even wiser. I hope. I keep my fingers crossed.
Oh, Jesus. My button took off.
By the way, Kazumi was getting married the day we spoke to him, and when the button on his tuxedo fell off, he did what a lot of 33-year-old entrepreneurs do. He called his mother.
I'm totally useless when it comes to...
You can make international deals involving billions of yen, but
Yeah,
you have to
but
call your
yeah.
mother to get a button so They may seem very un-Japanese to some of the older generation, but they are the essence of the new Japan.
はじめまして、梅田と申します。
And before the transition is complete, the old-timers just might learn something from them.
When they retire from the company, you have to think about their life. See? You have to think about how to spend time, how to kill time until they die.
It hurts, sinus pressure and headache. It really...
Tonight, following closely the story in Washington developing at this hour, the Senate Armed Services Committee voting up or down on the nomination of John Tower for defense. And we will break into our programming here anytime we know what that vote turns out to be. Covering here, the final farewell to Emperor Hirohito. And what's happening at this moment, these pictures live, as the procession continues to make its way from the Imperial Palace to the National Gardens, where the formal ceremonies will be held, both Shinto and state. The last time an emperor was buried here, 4 oxen pulled the coffin, and there was a threat of anarchy. The police at that time, in 1926-27, considered the threat of anarchists their biggest threat. For Americans who lived through World War II, there is, of course, a harsh echo in the name given to Hirohito's reign. Showa, as it was called by the Japanese, was the reign of enlightened peace. With the death of the emperor, the era of enlightened peace also ends. The name of the new reign of Emperor Akihito is Heisei, the era of achieving peace.
Slowly, quietly, the Japanese military is rising from the ashes of World War II. Japan today has more destroyers than the U.S. Navy has in all of Asia. The Japanese have their own homegrown fighter planes as well as American F-15s, which are now made in Japan. Ski troops in the mountains of northern Japan. No longer an army of conquest, today it is called simply the Ground Self-Defense Force. You never hear very much about the Japanese military. That's because they never show up in trouble spots around the world. But here they are, training for the only thing their Constitution allows them to do, which is self-defense.
Soldiers are very good skiers. Very, very good skiers.
Americans are here too.
kick them 60s, we got the suppression. Once that suppression goes, hell-bent for leather up to the top.
Marines from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina,
Get it up!
commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Francis Bussum,
Blade Runner 6, this is Beowulf.
on the last day of a 3-day exercise in the snow and cold.
So they're about 200 meters still east of checkpoint 8.
Super. They made good time this morning. The Marines and the Japanese have worked very close together. Again, it's bilateral training.
Get out, we're taking fire! Get out, get out! Fire and move, fire and move!
They have worked with us. They have worked with my Marines to get us to a level that we can at least move in the snow. I don't know how fast we move, but we can move.
Come on, second, you're falling behind. First is already through. Bring it around on the right.
Let me go talk to the colonel and see how we're going to play this.
Go.
Go? Might as well. Let's do it.
思い切って5行きましょう。
Yeah.
It may continue this attack.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Let's go. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go.
Blade Runner, this is Shamrock, over. Roger, be prepared to seize Objective 2, also, over.
Roger that. Let's open up on it. Go!
U.S. forces are here to help, obviously, defend Japan because it's in our best interest Japan remain a sovereign nation.
Lieutenant General James Davis is commander of U.S. forces in Japan.
Frankly, Japan is sitting in such a strategic and position, and we'll show you a couple charts to show you why.
From a Soviet perspective, Japan is...
Seen from the Soviet Union, Japan looks like a giant aircraft carrier blocking the Soviet Navy's access to the Pacific Ocean.
When you take the Japanese self-defense forces and you add the 7th Fleet and you add the rest of the U.S. forces Japan, it's going to be a very difficult process for them to overwhelm us.
We're in the Cigarro Straits right now. A little bit further up here, they actually narrow down some more, about 12 miles across.
All right, now we got Japan on our left and we've got Japan on our right, right? This is one of the straits. If the Soviet Navy were going to come out into the Pacific, they'd have to come through. That's correct. Yes, Navy Commander Ed Boynton can see it all from his patrol plane.
The target we're looking for is up in that area.
The target being what?
It's a Group 3 mership, Soviet mership.
A Soviet merchant ship.
Just gained a couple contacts up here. They're right in the area of probability.
So what is that?
Looks like a Russian tug, ocean-going tug. Yeah, Soviet. Nothing too serious to worry about.
We don't spend a lot of time getting out to our targets. That's one of the primary reasons Misawa is such an outstanding base for us here to operate out of.
Misawa Air Force Base, home to both American and Japanese warplanes.
Japan does what's assigned very well. It is fully capable of providing air defense. As far as power projection, they don't possess the capability to get off the islands of Japan, and that's exactly the way they like it, and that's the way their constitution's laid out.
But American F-16s at Misawa are under no such constraints. One of the missions they train for, attacking the Soviet mainland.
What he's doing here is he's simulating an attack on a high-threat target.
At this firing range, Americans and Japanese test their bombing and strafing accuracy.
Cleared hot, 2. 10 hits 1.
Captain Steve Cobro keeps score.
How do you rate the Japanese pilots? How good are they?
They're good and they're getting better. I think a lot of that is due to the interaction with us because we do train with them and we do exchange tactics. I think they appreciate what we do for them as far as augmenting their military here. I think that they appreciate that.
Appreciated by contributing the equivalent of $45,000 for each American serviceman based in Japan, the most paid by any American ally. High-rise housing built for Americans at Misawa is just one example. With public opinion here still suspicious of anything that smacks of aggression, the Japanese sometimes find it easier to spend money on the American military than on their own.
Get up, go through it!
At the cold weather exercise, Marines make the final push on their hilltop objective.
Shift right! Right now! Shift right! Go! What's that? Shift right!
Japanese troops provide fire support. Japanese General Keizo Shigematsu.
What do you learn from the Marines in an exercise like that?
We've learned a lot from the Marines. The Marines live up to their reputation. They're very thorough in their training, their discipline is rigid, and their teamwork is good.
Roger, we're moving through now. We got one squad on the right. On your forward.
Well, I think anytime you have the opportunity to work with a foreign country and with a foreign service, what you learn and what they learn from you, the advantages and the keeping those strong bonds of friendship outweigh anything else you could think of.
Sergeant Bell!
Shrine, Tokyo's largest Shinto temple, and this is Foundation Day, the most important day in the Shinto calendar. It celebrates the enthronement of Japan's first emperor 2,649 years ago. A legend eagerly embraced today by Japan's right wing. They view the emperor as a descendant of God. The right's objective, to revise Japan's constitution, which was drafted by the Americans after the war. It strips away the emperor's divinity, grants him only symbolic power, and prohibits the rearming of Japan. Mayoshi Takahashi is the elder statesman of the right wing. This meeting of the right, the first since the emperor's death, was called to map out an agenda for the new era.
We have to revise the Constitution. We are getting older, so we can't delay action.
Japan's rearmament is on top of the list.
We must be fully equipped in order to prevent an intrusion by our enemies. I'm not saying that we should wage war. However, there might be some situation where we need to dispatch our forces. I think we're coming to a time when this may happen.
So Mr. Takahashi isn't waiting for Japan's constitution to be revised. He's building his own army. He gave us these tapes to illustrate how he's personally leading the charge against what he perceives to be the communist threat. At many right-wing gatherings here, you'll also see the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Mr. Takahashi told us he used to be a prominent figure in the Yakuza. We noticed that at the party meeting we were just at, a lot of men were missing their small finger. How was that?
When you are a Yakuza and you make a mistake and fail someone, you must apologize by cutting off your pinky finger. But I have my 10 fingers.
Peter McGill, a correspondent for London's Observer newspaper, has been covering Japan for 8 years.
For the ruling party in Japan and the more establishment right, these guys are tolerated because they fulfill a very useful function. They squash dissent. They stifle free speech. They intimidate people. And that is very useful, obviously, in Japan in pushing forward the program of the right.
Journalists have been threatened by the right wing, have they not?
I admit that. If the newspapers would tell the truth, we would not need to do so. However, the government and the mass media are distorting the truth. So we might get angry and pick up an ashtray and do something with it.
How does the right wing go about intimidating journalists?
Shooting them. Shot one journalist dead with a big shotgun, and the other guy was seriously injured. But there have been numerous other sort of, telephone death threats, and this kind of thing goes on the whole time. And Japanese journalists tell me that we pretend, we are not frightened. We have a free press and free speech, but they say, by God, we are frightened. We don't we think twice before writing about anything which is going to antagonize the right wing.
What I think I understand is that when a journalist prints something that you don't like, when he distorts the truth in your words, you do something really bad to him.
We are not trying to attack the individual, but the company which publishes the newspaper he works for.
The ultra-rightists in the sound trucks with the Al Capone sharp suits on, they would not be such a dominant force were it not for a degree of sympathy and tolerance with elements in the ruling party.
With my picture with Mr. Nakasone?
Is he a friend of Nakasone's?
I am quite a close friend of former Prime Minister Nakasone. I come to offer my prayer to the late emperor and for the stability of the royal family.
They want to return to a Japan in which individual rights are not as important as authority and duty and obligation. That makes me wonder how deep democracy is in Japan.
Understanding Japan. Now, I want to pause and switch live from Tokyo to Washington because the outcome of the vote up or down on the John Tower for Defense nomination seems to be clear out of tonight's meeting of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Bob Schieffer is on Capitol Hill. Bob?
Dan, the actual vote has not yet taken place, but just a minute ago, Ohio Senator John Glenn became the 11th committee member, the 11th Democrat on the committee, to say that he will recommend that John Tower not be confirmed as Defense Secretary. So that means that all of the Democrats have now said on the record that they're going to vote against Tower's confirmation. Now, this will still go to the Senate floor, but it must be said that if George Bush decides to stick with John Tower, at best there will be a bruising fight on the Senate floor, and if Tower is confirmed as Defense Secretary, it must be looked on at this point as an uphill battle.
John Tower doesn't get the vote he wants out of the Senate Armed Services Committee and now must fight for his nomination on the floor of the full Senate. We'll continue our coverage, Understanding Japan, at the dawn of a new era in a moment.
The only way to travel is Cadillac style.
Right now, leasing is smarter than ever because your Cadillac dealer is offering remarkably low monthly payments when you lease a sporty new Eldorado, as well as other selected Cadillacs. Just ask about Smart Lease. Cadillac style.
Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac style. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac style.
You're ready to sell your house? Call Coldwell Banker. We don't just tell you we'll do everything we can to find you a buyer. We guarantee we'll use 18 proven marketing techniques to sell your home. We guarantee it in writing. And we wouldn't give you that guarantee if we weren't confident of one thing. Coldwell Banker. Expect the best. We guarantee it. A member of the Sears Financial Network.
Paradise, next, Wild West. Friday, outsiders invade the underworld.
You must not be anywhere near. I want to be by your side.
And Catherine is kidnapped. Beauty and the Beast. Then on Dallas,
I told you I'm not staying unless we get married.
Sue Ellen crashes JR's wedding.
Now where is that sweet young thing?
On 2 Hour Dallas, Friday.
Monday is made for Murphy's.
Free game brand. I ain't moving out the driveway till y'all free game brand.
Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy ask the burning question, what's Alan watching? Followed by more Murphy madness with Murphy Brown.
I'm back.
Then it's 4 of the prettiest faces in comedy, Designing Women. And at a special time, the arresting Bob Newhart. Followed by TV's funniest moms, Kate and Allie. It's Murphy's Moms, Beauties, and Bob, Monday on CBS.
Make it your business to find out about AIDS. Make it your business to do something about it. The life you save may be your own.
Live from downtown Tokyo, scenes of the final farewell to Emperor Hirohito. Take a look. This is the scene at the Shinjuku Gardens, the national park. This is one of the highlights of this final farewell. See the yellow flags, white flags, the sun flag, the moon flag, the spears and shields, the sacred trees on either side of the altar, the Grand Master of Ceremonies for the Shinto ceremonies. Let's listen for a moment. For centuries, the emperors of Japan lived in splendid but suffocating isolation. Hirohito was the 124th in a direct line of succession, the Japanese were told, but Hirohito was the first Japanese emperor ever to leave Japanese soil. He went to Europe, learned to dance, learned to drink wine, European wine. He was fascinated by the United States and eventually paid a visit to the USA in 1975. There, Hirohito met John Wayne, he toured Disneyland, and took home a Mickey Mouse watch.
Let's start morning assembly. First, let's stretch your side and warm arm. Warm, no, sorry.
Corporate boot camp.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Legions of young Japanese executives prepping for duty overseas.
All right, now change your sentences.
I need 10 hands. You need 10 hands. I need 10 hands. So, you also need 10 hands.
NEC, the electronics giant,
Is this your first time to come to America? Yes, this is
goes to great lengths to make the transition to American business life as painless as possible.
Okay, shall we get down to business?
But as executives who have gone before them well know,
I need sheep. I have 5 sheep.
learning to make deals
easy.
is the easy part when East meets West. Sunday morning in Kawasaki, suburban Tokyo. An anxious Japanese family prepares for a day all will long remember. Hello.
Hello.
This afternoon, Ashiko Uemura leaves for America, transferred by NEC to Portland, Oregon. Yoshiko, his wife, and his daughter Noriko won't join him until April. They will stay for 4 years. What kind of a kitchen do you think you might have?
Our house is going to be big, so the kitchen will probably be big too.
It's an adventure into the unknown and more living space. So, does someone sleep in this room?
Yes, yes. This is the only room that we have to sleep.
So everybody sleeps in here?
Yes.
All right. Yoshiko doesn't speak English, but she thinks she'll adjust.
First, I want to be able to speak English. I could take some courses, or maybe my neighbors will teach me.
And Ashiko thinks that he'll adjust. Both worry that Noriko may adjust too well.
I will try to do everything in the American way.
You will?
Yes, I will. But in the home, I have to show the Japanese way to her.
Does she think that it's a good thing that Noriko will pick up American style?
When she's living in American society, it's okay that she acts in the American way. But when she comes back to Japan, she should be aware that some things may be inappropriate.
In the Japanese way of thinking, we really stress group orientation. But I heard in the United States, the individual comes first. So I think it will be difficult for us to teach her the difference.
I want something to drink. I want something to drink.
If it's hard for Japanese families to go to the U.S., it may be even harder to come back home. Higashi Junior High School has about 120 returnees.
Everybody wanted to look like everybody else, and I wasn't ready for it.
I went there when I was 5, so I never learned about Japanese culture.
The schools are more strict.
They're more strict. What was your first reaction when you heard that you had to wear a certain color and you had to do everything by the rules?
Well, I was like, well, this is Japan, you know?
これちょっと難しいですね。refrigerator.
Akane Kawamoto returned to Japan in 1987 after 8 years in the U.S., and she's had some problems. Speaking English, of course, not among them.
Something to drink too.
There's a lot of milk.
Milk again.
You mustn't complain. A lot of people are starving in some parts of the world.
Would any of you like to go back to the United States?
Yes.
Yeah, I got friends there.
When I get like phone calls from my friends in New York, and then they tell me what they're doing there, and then it's like everything's so different from here. So sometimes I wish I could be back there.
But for now, this with-it teenager from Westchester County, New York, lives with her parents and 2 sisters in a cramped Tokyo apartment, Japanese style. What kind of house did you have? What was it like?
Each room for children and guest room.
Oh. Do you think, either of you think that any of your friends or people you know treat you differently?
People in general, when they hear that we were returnees, they get prejudiced and they get very rude to us. I think if I didn't go to America, then I would have had a smaller view of the world.
I'm proud of them. They can speak both languages and understand your mind and my mind.
The Uemuras say they hope their daughter someday will be able to do the same. Right now, they worry more about the last-minute details of a journey they know is bound to be a true culture shock.
I'm worried about some of the things I won't know how to do.
At the airport, a stoic goodbye.
Live again in Tokyo, a scene that you may not see again in your lifetime. The funeral procession going through the national park. The new emperor, Akihito, the crown prince who becomes the emperor. As farewell is said to Emperor Hirohito, he passes in front of the dignitaries. The new Emperor Akihito, who was tutored by an American woman of the Quaker faith, presiding here today. The Shinto religious side of this ceremony, which is separated only slightly from the official state ceremony. The palanquin, in which is the cypress coffin with Hirohito. 51 imperial guards. The procession includes rank-and-file Japanese, as well as members of the royal family and other officials. In mourning clothes. And the rains came. Emperor Akihito. Under the dark umbrella. Our coverage live from Tokyo, Japan at the dawn of a new era, will continue in a moment.
They say men get better with age, and women just age. Oh, really?
Oil of Olay.
Men get character lines, women get wrinkles. Oh, really?
Created to penetrate quickly, lessen the look of lines.
Only men get sexier. Oh, really?
Created to fight dryness, silken, like your skin's youthful fluid.
I don't intend to grow old gracefully.
Oil of Olay.
I'm fighting it every step of the way. Really.
I started to cough. For a DJ, coughing is death. So I said to Dave, get over to the pharmacy quick. And he comes back with some kitty medicine.
Not all cough medicines work the same.
I didn't even unwrap it. I said, get back there and get me something strong like codeine. And he brought some Vicks Formula 44.
Today's Formula 44, as effective as codeine, but non-narcotic. It starts to work the instant you swallow.
I took the Formula 44 and it worked.
Vicks Formula 44. So effective, it starts working the instant you swallow.
What a relief.
48 Hours will continue.
A star-studded international field takes on the challenge that is Doral Blue Monster. The Doral Ryder Open this weekend on CBS Sports.
T-minus 15.
A collision course with destiny.
You're here to build an atomic bomb.
That could draw the final curtain on mankind.
No outside contact.
Brian Dennehy.
7.
Michael Tucker.
3.
Richard Dysart.
1.
To avoid the day after, you must experience day 1, Sunday, March 5th, following 60 Minutes.
This is CBS.
Yesterday is so clear. Day and night turn to years. It's your dream, don't let go. Sooner, better, I want you to know this life, good life. Give it all you have to give. See what it really means to me.
Homeland, come home to Homeland.
Homeland produce, fresh and green, straight from the field, the best you've seen. Homeland has it, the apple of your eye. Toss salad for a chef or a fresh fruit pie.
Come home to Homeland, the best a market can be. Homeland, the best a market can be.
Clearing the Air, tonight at 10 on the news on 6.
Right to left in that picture, the new emperor, the empress, and the crown prince. And now the exterior view of where the main Shinto funeral ceremony is about to begin, a funeral that draws dignitaries and attention from around the world. It's such an important symbol for the Japanese, an island people who have a history of excluding outsiders. If the United States is a melting pot, Japan is a sealed jar. And it's a full one. This country is bigger than you might think. Population 122 million, half the population of the United States. And they all live in a country that, while bigger than any single country in Europe, would fit inside our state of California.
Miles south of Tokyo, you find a piece of Japan that carries you back in time. Kumamoto Province on the island of Kyushu. It may not look it, or sound it, or even feel it, but this is where Japan's past is rushing to catch up with its future. Even though most Americans never heard of Kumamoto, this is the New World. This is Japan's Silicon Valley. And right across the road from this rice paddy, in that plant, they make more computer chips than any company makes in any plant anywhere in the world. Japan is rich and getting richer, but wealth, of course, never comes cheap. And more than most Americans realize, the Japanese themselves are paying the price. Maiki Tomayo works on the assembly line at the local Honda plant. He is a fairly typical factory worker who does the kinds of things you picture Japanese workers doing. He meets with a team of workers to discuss productivity goals. Why the cheers? The group is ahead of schedule. And a salute just before they hit the assembly line. Translation, be prudent, be patient, be safe. Honda is thriving. Maiki is just getting by.
In the long run, I appreciate the fact that my company is growing. But at this present time, company seems to be having a bigger share of the money versus us.
He owns his own home, but that's because his parents gave him the land. Otherwise, he couldn't afford it. Counting his mother and father and wife and kids, there are 8 of them. 8 in a 5-room house. If I'm not being rude, what do you spend your money on?
Many Americans would save money to enjoy their lives. In other words, if they were to plan out a ski trip or something, then they would save money to do that if that will make them happy. But in Japan, we have to save money to consider the fact that I may have to have enough money for my son when he grows up to buy a house, and I may have to have money in the long future that I may have to enlarge the house or renew the house. All these things are Japanese way of considering the future. We've been wanting to get a new television, obviously. However, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting with a new older television, and it just happens that it just broke down, and we decided to buy the new television. However, I purchased through a loan. I did not buy it in cash.
You're the ones who are selling us all these things. Why don't you have these things?
We don't make as much as what American people presume that we're doing.
Morihiro Hosokawa is the governor of Kumamoto province. Americans, when we think of Japan, we think of this economic powerhouse. And yet, most Japanese don't live as well as most Americans. Why is that?
As a matter of fact, your question is precise, very accurate, in a sense that they're saying about our country is the rich country, poor people, poor citizens. And especially, for example, when it comes to like building a house, it's very expensive, especially food expense, and that is very high cost as well.
I had never heard the expression rich country, poor people before. Is that what you say here?
I always talk about that. I always say that. Because simply the land cost is so high, something has to be done in terms of revolution. You know, something big has to take place in order to reduce the cost.
Land in Japan is like water in the desert. There isn't a lot of it. Japan has enough money to buy anything, including land in America. What it cannot do is ship it back home to make more room for bigger, less expensive houses. And what open space is left is controlled by farmers, powerful people in a country where land is so precious. Meanwhile, Kumamoto keeps racing into the future. They're building a new research center here, an attempt to draw Japanese best and brightest to this Silicon Island. It has become popular to believe that while America won the war, Japan is winning the peace. A lot of Americans believe that. But more and more Japanese don't. Do you envy Americans?
Very much so.
When you say Japan in America, we think of wealth, prosperity, success, and you envy Americans.
You may find this rather difficult to believe, but if I were to say winning or losing, I think we're in the losing end of it, and I think Americans are winning end of it.
Tokyo, Back to the Future, the supercharged center of political, economic, and cultural life. Washington, Detroit, and New York, all jammed into one urban sprawl. Nearly 1/4 of the nation is within commuting distance of downtown. This is what the Japanese call lasho hour. That's right, rush hour. Like so many other things, an American invention that the Japanese have improved on.
This means beginning of tea ceremony.
And then we will invite the guests through the roji, we call roji. This is the Japanese traditional garden.
This is a 14th century tea house. It is also the Tokyo penthouse of architect Kisho Kurokawa, whose designs have dotted the skylines of Europe and the United States, and whose concerns have now come home to Tokyo. It's an amazing hodgepodge, isn't it?
Yes, yes. It's a like mixture of different scales. And usually, Japanese people like to have, you know, symbiosis of past and future, the history and contemporary technological systems. My house is the same thing. I have a traditional space, and then this is the Western type of studio.
Could be Los Angeles.
Yes.
Actually, Los Angeles times 2. Greater Tokyo has a population of 25 million, and they're still coming. This is some of the priciest real estate on our planet. Just ask the Australians who are trying to build a new embassy.
The solution was very simple. We sold off only about 40% of the land that we hold, retain the rest, and as part of the sale, get a completely new embassy.
And what are you getting?
Well, if we round that out in dollars and cents, about more than 800 million US dollars.
800 million US dollars?
Yes.
6,000 square meters of land.
That's a good price. And that was a major contributor to a turnaround in one financial year from a national deficit to a national surplus.
Piece of property in downtown Tokyo has wiped out the Australian national debt.
It helped substantially.
They say the one thing about real estate is that they don't make it anymore. Well, Kisho Kurokawa thinks he's found a way.
But we need a future city. It is linked directly with the subway and bridges.
It's a bold trillion-dollar proposal for a man-made island right in the middle of Tokyo Bay.
Tokyo is a city